Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
They didn't even knock when they told me. Leah called while I was in the middle of cleaning up after Danny's cereal explosion. 3 bowls in a row because he insisted the first 2 weren't cold enough. I just mopped the floor, my back screaming from being hunched over since 6 in the morning, when my sister's voice, sweet, smug, rehearsed, sliced through the phone like a carving knife. "Hey, just wanted to let you know we're taking Danny on the cruise after all. Thought it'd be nice, for you to have some alone time. Self-care and all that," she said, and I could hear the fake smile leaking through the receiver like syrup over dry toast. I didn't even say anything at first. Not because I was speechless, but because I was calculating. Leah never did anything spontaneously. If she's breathing, she's planning something, and when she's cheerful, you better check if your name's on a will. "You're taking him where?" I asked finally, my voice low and sharp, slicing through her facade like the edge of a good kitchen knife. "Oh, come on. Don't make this about you," she said, half laughing like I'd told a joke. "It's only a week. You always say how tired you are." I thought it'd be a nice surprise. The word surprise landed like a slap. Because no one surprises a caregiver by taking their autistic, nonverbal brother halfway across the world without discussing it. Especially when the so-called surprise comes with no warning, no planning, and definitely no permission. And yet, there they were, 2 hours later, pulling into the driveway with their oversized bags and grinning like they were filming a commercial for luxury family vacations. Leah was in her high-heeled cruise sandals, and Mom, Janice, wore one of her wide-brimmed hats like she was hiding from judgment, which is rich, coming from the most judgmental woman I've ever met. Danny looked excited, or maybe confused. He was wearing his old hoodie even though it was 80 degrees outside, clutching his DVD copy of Full House like it was his passport. He doesn't do change well. He doesn't do travel well. And he damn sure doesn't do Leah well. "Don't worry, we've got everything handled," Mom said, patting my shoulder like I was the family pet. "Just relax. You're always so tense." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a favor. This was a power move. This was them flexing control, showing me they didn't need me. They were going to prove they could handle Danny without the old spinster sister always hovering in the background. "Where are you staying?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Oh, we got first-class suites," Leah said, like a teenager flashing a fake ID. Tom pulled some strings. Balcony views, jacuzzi tubs, the whole deal. "You don't think he'll get overwhelmed?" I asked, looking at Danny, who was already humming to himself and tapping the side of the van. "He'll be fine," Mom snapped, already done pretending. "You act like he's made of glass." That one stung. I didn't say it out loud, but I wanted to scream. I'm the one who stays up all night when he has sensory overload. I'm the one who knows what brand of yogurt won't send him into a tailspin. I'm the one who remembers to cut the tags out of his shirts and notices when he's trying to tell us something, even without words. But instead, I stood there and watched them drive away. Just like that. No itinerary. No emergency plan. Not even a real goodbye. The silence afterward wasn't peace. It was a heavy, haunted kind of quiet that sticks to your bones. I wandered the house like a ghost in someone else's story. I checked Danny's room, more out of habit than anything else. His blanket was still twisted from the night before. His favorite socks were tossed in the corner like always. Everything felt slightly off. Not wrong, exactly, just off, like someone had been in there pretending to understand his world. Then I saw it, sitting neatly on his desk next to the crayons he never used anymore. A list, labeled in my handwriting, only it wasn't mine. Vacation pack, Danny. Each item was something only I would remember. Noise-canceling headphones. Blue bowl, not the green. Picture schedule. Even his backup meds, something Leah didn't even know existed. The handwriting was close enough to pass if you didn't look too long. But I did. And when I saw the E in schedule curled wrong and the number 3 drawn European style with a bar through it, just like Leah's stupid bullet journal, I knew. They had forged my list. They had used me. Not included me. Not even consulted me. Just imitated me. Like I was a robot they could program and replace. I sat down on his bed, the mattress creaking like it was groaning under the weight of every year I'd given away. 15 birthdays I'd spent with Danny instead of friends. 12 Christmases wrapping his toys while Mom sipped wine and Leah posted filtered family photos online. 1,000 quiet moments I'd given up my life without even asking for it back. And now they were playing house, acting like they were the loving heroes swooping in to give me a break. I stared at that fake list, my hands shaking, not from anger exactly, but from something worse. A deep, cutting awareness that I'd been erased, replaced, overwritten like I was a glitch in their perfect family program. They'd taken my brother on a cruise, and they'd left me home like a mistake. And that's when I realized I wasn't going to be here when they got back. There's a kind of silence that doesn't comfort. It scratches at the walls of your mind like an animal trapped in a cage, and that's exactly what the house felt like on the second day after they left with Danny. It wasn't just the absence of noise that got to me, it was the way I realized, slowly and cruelly, that no one was coming back to ask how I was doing or even whether I was alive. At first, I tried to tell myself it was a break, a gift of rest, that they truly meant well and maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely selfish or manipulative. I made a pot of coffee and sat on the porch swing like it was Sunday morning and not the aftermath of betrayal, but that lasted less than half an hour. Because the truth doesn't stay quiet, not for long. It keeps pushing its way up through the cracks, through the floorboards and the dusty blinds, until you're sitting there in your pajama pants surrounded by years of unpaid dreams, and suddenly every photo frame starts to feel like a damn accusation. They hadn't left me behind out of kindness. They'd left me out. There's a difference. A big one. I stood in the hallway staring at the picture wall Mom insisted we keep updated. The one where Leah's wedding portrait takes up more space than any other event in our family history. There I was in the background of every major family moment. Never the focus, always the assistant. Bridesmaid, babysitter, background character. Danny's birthday photos were there, of course, and I'm in all of them, lighting candles or handing him toys or wiping cake off his chin. Leah's not in most of those. Neither is Mom, not really. They'd swoop in for 15 minutes, take a photo, and leave before the hard part started. I was the one who stayed up all night when Danny had night terrors and shook so hard his teeth would chatter. I'm the one who held him through panic attacks, learned sign language just in case, made visual schedules from scratch. I was the one who didn't leave. And now they had. I walked down the hall toward my room, past Danny's door, which I still couldn't look into without feeling my stomach twist, like it was full of glass. I opened my own door and stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the plain beige walls and the twin bed and the pile of laundry I never had the energy to fold. It didn't look like a grown woman's room. It looked like a holding cell. There were still boxes in the corner marked College, Fall 01. That was the year I deferred my teaching program just until Mom could find a better aide for Danny. That better aide never came. Neither did the second semester. Or the third. I'd been stuck in that house for over 15 years. Wait, no, Danny was born in 91. So yeah, almost 20. God, it feels like 32. That kind of math doesn't lie. It just forgets to count all the parts of you that died quietly while you were waiting for someone else to say, "You can go now, we've got it from here." But they never did. And now I wasn't sure I needed permission anymore. I started with the closet. It's funny how many clothes you can collect that don't really belong to you. Half the sweaters were hand-me-downs from Leah or birthday gifts from Mom that still had tags on them. There was a stack of slacks for job interviews I never got to attend, and 3 pairs of sneakers worn to the sole from pacing with Danny during his anxious loops around the house. I grabbed an empty moving box from the garage, one of the ones still left from when Dad died, and we cleared out his tools. It was labeled Keep, and I crossed that out with a Sharpie and wrote mine. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry in that moment. It was something quieter, but far heavier. It was a decision. I started filling the box with only the things that I knew were mine because I chose them. Not things given to me. Not things I wore out of politeness. Not things someone else left behind for me to pick up. Just the bare essentials of a person who's finally walking away, not to make a statement, but to start a sentence. There was no music playing. No montage. Just the sound of tape tearing and the occasional creak of the floor under my feet. I didn't even know where I was going yet, but I knew that staying was no longer an option. The next morning, I brewed a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my old laptop. It was slow, full of junk files and forgotten tabs, but it booted up eventually. I opened a new email draft. To myself. Subject line, Plan B, execute quietly. And in the body of the email, I started listing every step I'd take next: burner phone, cash from savings, bus routes, what to do if Leah called the cops, what to do if Mom showed up screaming, what to do if Danny asked for me. That last one was the hardest, because I knew he would. And I knew I wouldn't be there to answer. People like to think that disappearing is some grand, dramatic thing, that it involves fake passports and hair dye and burning your fingerprints off on a stove coil, but the truth is, most of the time it's just a quiet, methodical unraveling of the life you never chose in the first place. It starts with a decision no louder than a sigh and ends with silence so deep you can't even hear your own guilt anymore. That was how I did it. No fireworks, no flames, no goodbye party, just a slow peeling away of everything they thought I'd never leave behind. The first step was the money, because of course it's always the money, and while they thought I was the forgettable one, the background character with no ambition, I'd been saving for years in dribs and drabs, folding away $20 here, $10 there. Birthday cash I never spent, holiday bonuses from remote jobs I picked up after Danny went to bed. I had over $5,000 hidden in a cereal box labeled Fiber Squares, the one nobody but Danny would ever touch because he thought it smelled like dirt. Then I sold the old sewing machine I never used, the treadmill Leah gave me one Christmas that was still in the box, and my collection of rare vintage Pyrex dishes that Mom insisted were too nice to use. A woman from Dayton paid $400 for the yellow mixing bowl set alone. I let her take it without a second thought because I knew I'd never mix anything in that house again. I canceled 2 credit cards, shredded the others, and paid the last phone bill in cash at the grocery store kiosk. I turned off location services on my cell, then left it charging on the kitchen counter where Leah could find it and feel smug about how careless I'd always been. I opened a new account at a credit union across town under my middle name, and because they'd never think to look there. They never remembered my middle name anyway. Mail forwarding was easy, a simple online form that took 4 minutes and a prepaid Visa gift card. I had it sent to a P.O. box in Denver, addressed to a name I hadn't used since high school. That was where Ruth lived now, Ruthie Meadows, my best friend from the days when I still believed life could be mine if I asked for it loudly enough. Ruth had once said to me, "When you finally break free, come find me. We'll disappear together like smoke." And I remembered that. I bought a bus ticket using cash and a fake name. Not fake enough to raise red flags, just fake enough to avoid their eyes if they ever thought to look. I packed one duffel bag, the blue one I used for overnight stays when Danny was hospitalized for seizures. It felt right, somehow, to use it for this. A twisted kind of symmetry. I left at 3:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. The sky was still ink black, and the only sounds were the rustling leaves and the low whine of the old refrigerator cycling through its dying breaths. I paused once at Danny's door, hand on the knob, knuckles white with hesitation. I didn't go in, but I did leave something behind. Inside his favorite DVD case, the one with the Golden Girls, which he watched on repeat when he was anxious, I tucked a handwritten note folded 4 times and creased at the corners from how many times I rewrote it. It said, "Danny, you're the only one I'll ever miss. Love, Marla." No long explanation. No apology. Just the truth, stripped down to its naked bones. The Greyhound was half empty and smelled like diesel, stale air, and something burnt, but I didn't care. I sat by the window, head leaned against the cool glass, watching the horizon stretch open like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. For the first hour, I couldn't feel anything. Not guilt, not sadness, not even relief. Just numbness, like my body was still in Ohio, but my soul had already crossed 3 state lines. By the time I reached Denver, Ruth was already waiting near the station, leaning against her beat-up pickup truck like a scene from a movie we would have loved at 20. She didn't ask me why I came. She didn't say, "Finally," or "What took you so long?" She just handed me a cup of gas station coffee and said, "Room's already made up. Bed's clean. You snore, I'm kicking you." We laughed for a full minute, not because it was funny, but because it was the first thing that didn't feel like pretending. Back home, though, the house I left behind was unraveling. I imagined it at the exact moment they pulled into the driveway, still jet-lagged and drunk on tropical cocktails and their own sense of superiority, expecting everything to be just as they left it. But it wasn't. The front door lock had been changed, twice. Actually, once by me and once by the locksmith who didn't ask questions when I paid in full and tipped him $40. The keys I left inside were gone. The drawers were empty. The closet held nothing but a few wire hangers and an old Halloween costume from 10 years ago. The only thing on the fridge was a single sticky note that read, "Be careful what you wish for." There were no clues, no forwarding address, not even a goodbye text. Mom would have stood there, clutching her pearls or whatever emotional relic she wore that day, demanding to know what happened. Leah probably stormed around blaming Tom or accusing the neighbors of theft, anything but admitting they had finally pushed me too far. Because that's what people like them do. They rewrite the story so they're still the victims, even when the room is empty, even when the silence is so loud it echoes. And I was gone. Just like that. No trace. No trail. No more leash. The first signs that something was off didn't come with a scream or a siren, but with the slightly raised eyebrows of Leah when her key no longer turned in the front door. She stood there for a full 3 minutes, jiggling the knob with growing impatience, as if the lock itself were to blame for not recognizing her superiority. Tom was behind her, dragging Danny's suitcase like a man who'd already mentally checked out of this vacation on day 2, while Janice was still sitting in the car, applying lipstick in the rearview mirror like she was prepping for a magazine cover shoot instead of a homecoming. "This can't be right," Leah muttered under her breath, now pounding on the door as if sheer entitlement could crack wood and steel. She probably jammed it with one of her stupid tools. She's always fixing things that aren't broken. When no one answered, not after 5 knocks, not after Leah's dramatic "Marla, open the door," yelled into the suburban quiet, the truth began to hover over them like storm clouds that had been gathering for years. Tom tried his key just for the hell of it, but of course it didn't work either, and even Janice finally got out of the car when it was obvious they weren't getting inside. "What the hell is going on?" she asked, in that tone she reserved for customer service reps and cashiers who didn't say, "Have a nice day." Leah looked at her, shrugging, which in Leah speak meant this is clearly someone else's fault, but I haven't decided who yet. It didn't take long for them to discover that not only was the lock changed, but the entire vibe of the house had shifted. The curtains were drawn tight. My car was gone. The mailbox held nothing but an envelope marked "Vacant, return to sender." When Leah finally broke into the side door, using a crowbar from Tom's trunk, what they found inside was not chaos, but something much more unsettling: order. Every drawer was empty. Every shelf had a subtle dust line where something used to be. The coffee pot was gone, the couch blanket missing, the fridge wiped clean of everything except a single glass jar of mustard and a half-used roll of foil. It didn't look ransacked, it looked removed. Like a person had unhooked herself from the life she'd been trapped in and taken only what she needed to survive. Leah stormed through the house, calling my name like I was hiding in the linen closet or under the sink. Janice stood in the living room with her arms crossed, glaring at the walls like they had betrayed her personally. Danny walked straight into his room, looked around at the empty floor space where his DVD stack used to sit, and sat down slowly on the bed, expression blank. By nightfall, Leah was pacing. Tom was back in the car on his phone Googling things like what to do when your sister disappears, and Janice had already drafted a message for Facebook asking for prayers and support during this stressful and confusing time. It didn't mention me by name until the third paragraph, and when it did, it referred to me as our dear Marla, who's been struggling with emotional burdens for years. They filed the police report the next morning, not because they were scared for me, but because Janice thought it looked suspicious to wait any longer. Leah insisted on being the one to speak to the officer, reciting details from memory in that clipped tone she uses when she wants to sound in control. Last seen 10 days ago. Dark hair, average height, probably depressed, possibly off her meds, though she admitted she didn't know if I was on any. The officer asked a few questions and nodded politely, but I imagine he filed that report under grown woman with enough of a reason. Then, on the third day, the package arrived. It was addressed to Leah Barnes, handwritten, no return label, just a thick yellow padded envelope left at her doorstep by someone who clearly didn't want to be seen. Inside were 3 Polaroids, each one taken with a timestamp in the corner. The first was a close-up of a set of house keys dangling from a hook labeled spare. The second was a snapshot of a burner phone next to a bus ticket dated the morning after their cruise departure. The third was a picture of a motel room bed with a familiar blue duffel bag sitting dead center like a declaration. Taped to the back of the third photo was a sticky note in my handwriting, the kind Leah had always mocked for being too neat for someone so passive. Now imagine 7 days with zero control. Fun, huh? Leah's face changed when she read that. It wasn't fear, it was rage, pure and flammable, the kind that comes from realizing the person you spent your life controlling just flipped the damn board and walked away mid-game. She crumpled the note, then smoothed it back out again, like she couldn't decide if it was evidence or humiliation. Tom, ever the silent spectator, asked if they should call the police again. Leah didn't answer. She just walked into the kitchen, pulled open every cabinet door, and stared at the empty spaces like she could will them full again. That night, while going through her phone for contacts who might know something, she accidentally recorded a voice memo. She must have hit the record button while checking voicemails or scrolling through photos of cocktails and sunsets from the cruise, trying to convince herself the week hadn't cost her more than it gave. The memo was 32 seconds long. And the last thing it captured was Janice's voice from the other room, muttering to herself, just loud enough for the mic to pick it up. We should have put her in a home instead of dragging Danny on that damn boat. The silence after that was deafening. And the message was clear. It's strange how fast a life can rearrange itself when you finally stop asking for permission to live it. One day you're folding someone else's socks and answering to a family that's been training you since childhood to think you owe them your spine, and the next, you're standing in the back room of a second-hand bookstore in a coastal town whose name you couldn't pronounce 3 weeks ago, holding a mug of reheated coffee and realizing that the world, when no one's watching, actually doesn't fall apart. The town is small, not the kind of small that's charming and full of smiling shopkeepers in aprons, but the kind that smells like salt, rust, and cigarettes, where everyone minds their own business because they're too tired or too burned to care. That's what I liked about it. It was invisible in the best possible way. No one here asks where you came from. They just nod, hand you your change, and move on. The woman who hired me at the bookstore is named Jeanette, and she smokes menthols behind the dumpster every morning before opening the shop. She asked if I'd ever worked retail before, and I lied and said yes, but she didn't care either way. She just wanted someone who showed up on time and didn't steal the good bookmarks. She let me stay in the apartment above the store, 2 rooms, barely furnished, but it has a door that locks and windows that face the ocean, and that alone made it feel like a castle. I told her my name was Annie. Not because I was trying to become someone new, but because I needed a name that didn't carry every ounce of old weight on its shoulders. Annie smiles when she talks. Annie walks to work. Annie reads novels on her lunch break and doesn't flinch when a car backfires. Annie doesn't answer to Mom. Annie doesn't get guilt texts from Leah. Annie is invisible. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom. I'd been gone for over 3 weeks before I even looked online. I told myself I wouldn't, that I didn't care, that I had severed that part of myself cleanly and without regret, but curiosity is a stubborn weed. So I found a quiet corner of the bookstore during lunch and opened a browser on the store's ancient computer, typed in my name, and braced for impact. There were posts, of course, Leah's Facebook flooded with vague pleas for support, pictures of me cropped from old family gatherings with captions like, "Please contact us if you've seen our sister, Marla." Comments ranged from the predictable prayers to the more suspicious, "Has she done this before?" Janice, ever the master of emotional stagecraft, had written a post that read like an obituary in everything but finality. She called me fragile but selfless and said, "We hope she finds the help she needs." No one asked why they took Danny without telling me. No one mentioned the years I'd given them. No one wondered if maybe I left for a damn good reason. Except one. Danny's page was blank, as always. He never used it much, though Leah ran it for him from time to time, usually posting old photos or quotes she claimed he liked. But buried in the private messages of that page was something I didn't expect to find. A voicemail. Sent from Leah's number, but clearly not her voice. I played it once, then again, and by the third time I had to sit down because I realized what I was hearing. It was Danny. The message was short, broken, garbled, full of static and hesitations. But buried underneath the digital noise, I heard him say it. Ma-dla. He didn't pronounce the R, not fully. But it was there. His first attempt at saying my name, caught on tape, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. Maybe he'd been practicing. Maybe he was looking for me. And just like that, the walls I'd built carefully, deliberately, brick by goddamn brick, started to crack like dry plaster. I didn't call back. I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the burner phone I kept in the drawer next to my socks, the one I swore I'd only keep for emergencies, the one I bought knowing I might one day need to hear his voice, even if I wasn't ready to reply. I told myself it was enough to know he thought of me, that I hadn't vanished completely from his orbit, that maybe, just maybe, he understood. But I also knew the second I called back, the tether would reattach itself to my spine like a parasite, and I'd be Marla again, the dependable one, the sacrificial lamb in a cardigan, and everything I'd escaped would come rushing back into my lungs like smoke. So I sat with it. Let the voicemail play again. Maybe one day I'll call him back. Or maybe I won't. Maybe this is the kind of story where the hero leaves and doesn't apologize for it. I made dinner that night, pasta with cheap sauce and garlic bread from the corner mart, and watched the sun slide behind the ocean like it had somewhere better to be. The sky turned that strange bruised pink color, the kind that makes you feel small and full of possibility at the same time. I was halfway through cleaning the dishes when the knock came. It wasn't loud. Just 2 taps, firm and deliberate. I froze. I'd told no one where I was. I hadn't even used my real last name to sign the lease. No one in this town knew who I used to be. I walked slowly toward the door, put my hand on the knob, held my breath, and opened it. Cut to black.